My name was written in her flowing script. Not Dan or Honey, but Daniel. Formal. Final. Inside was a letter I'd read so many times since that I could recite it verbatim. I've been unhappy for too long. Richard makes me feel alive again. I deserve this chance at happiness. I'm sorry. Richard. Her boss at the marketing firm. The man who'd eaten dinner at our table during company gatherings. The man who'd shaken my hand with corporate warmth while apparently planning to take my wife. I set the letter down and noticed the second envelope. Divorce papers, already signed by Amanda. Efficient. Like everything she did. When I called our bank, the customer service representative's sympathetic tone told me everything before she even pulled up our accounts. I'm sorry, Mr. Harmon, but the joint checking account shows a zero balance after a withdrawal of $42,367.89 yesterday afternoon. The savings account emptied. Our investment portfolio liquidated and transferred. Even our credit cards were maxed out with cash advances. I thanked the representative and hung up. The house felt cavernous around me. A 15-year museum of memories suddenly hollowed out. I didn't yell. I didn't break anything. Those who know me would expect nothing less. Emotional outbursts aren't in my nature. Instead, I made a cup of coffee and sat at our dining room table with my laptop. People often misinterpret calm for weakness. Amanda certainly had. What she, and now Richard, failed to understand was that my analytical approach to life wasn't just a personality quirk, but the core of who I am. It's what made me successful as a financial analyst specializing in risk management. And it's why 7 years earlier, I had opened an account she knew nothing about. I navigated to a banking portal that wasn't among our shared financial bookmarks. My fingers typed in the complex password, muscle memory from years of monthly deposits. The balance loaded, $387,465.32. Not our life savings by any means, but my personal safety net, built slowly, deliberately, with bonuses and small percentages of my salary. Not because I anticipated betrayal specifically, but because 15 years in finance had taught me that contingency plans weren't pessimism, they were prudence. I closed the laptop and watched the sunset through our bay windows, mentally cataloging which furniture was mine, which was hers, and which I no longer wanted regardless of ownership. Tomorrow, I would need to find a lawyer. Tonight, I would allow myself this one evening of quiet grief for the life I thought we had. Amanda had taken our past. She had emptied our present. But she had no idea that I had already secured my future. People think financial analysts are just number crunchers. We're not. We're pattern recognizers. We see stories and data that others miss. My name is Daniel Harmon, 45, Senior Risk Assessment Analyst at Morgan & Blackwell for the past 12 years. I specialize in wealth preservation strategies for high-net-worth clients, helping people protect what they've built against market volatility, economic downturns, and sometimes their own worst instincts. Amanda and I met at a charity gala when I was 30. She worked in marketing, all creative energy and impulsive brilliance, where I was calculated and methodical. We balance each other, she used to say in the early years, her hand on mine at dinner parties. Later, that same observation became a criticism. You never take chances, Daniel. You're too careful. The irony doesn't escape me. Our marriage had good years, travel, dinner parties, plans for children that never materialized due to complications we weathered together. But something shifted around year 10. The changes were subtle at first. Weekend work commitments, new clothes, a private password on her phone. I didn't confront her. Instead, I did what I do best, analyze patterns. 7 years ago, during the Hanover client crisis, when I helped a technology magnate salvage his fortune after his business partner embezzled millions, I had an epiphany. I watched a man lose half his wealth because he trusted completely. That night, I opened my separate account and began making modest monthly deposits. Not because I expected betrayal, but because risk management isn't about pessimism, it's about preparation. The same reason you buy insurance hoping never to use it. The separate account wasn't about secrecy but security. A financial backup plan that wouldn't be compromised if something happened to me, to us, or to our main assets. Amanda showed little interest in our financial planning beyond ensuring we maintained her preferred lifestyle. That's why I married a numbers man, she'd laugh, sliding the investment statements back to me unread. Her disinterest created my invisibility. I often wonder if Richard knows what he's gotten himself into. Amanda's spending habits accelerated significantly over the past 2 years. Designer handbags, weekend spa retreats, the luxury car upgrade she insisted was necessary for client impressions. The signs were there, in our credit card statements and diminishing savings rate. While she saw me as boring and predictable, those same qualities allowed me to build a safety net strand by strand, invisible to her increasingly distracted gaze. The morning after discovering her departure, I awoke with unusual clarity. The path forward materialized in my mind like one of my financial projection models, Step-by-step actions, contingencies, a clear endpoint. The skills I'd spent years perfecting for clients would now serve a more personal purpose. I reached for my phone and called Mitch Sanders, my college roommate turned corporate attorney. "It's time I started my own firm," I told him when he answered. "And I need a divorce lawyer who understands complex assets." A pause, then. "She finally left you for him, didn't she?" Some patterns, it seems, are obvious to everyone except those in the center of them. The legal system moves with glacial patience, but financial markets wait for no one. While Amanda's attorney demanded alimony based on my superior earning capacity, I focused on transforming my secret fund into seed capital. "You're not obligated to disclose assets acquired before filing," Mitch advised during our strategy session. "The timing works in your favor." "I'm not hiding anything," I clarified. "I'm just not volunteering information that isn't requested specifically." That distinction mattered to me. The moral clarity of my position was something I needed during those hollow months living in a sparsely furnished two-bedroom apartment, surrounded by boxes labeled with 15 years of memories. The divorce proceedings revealed more than just the dissolution of our marriage. Financial discovery showed Amanda had been siphoning small amounts from our accounts for nearly 2 years. Nothing dramatic enough to trigger my attention, but consistent enough to establish a pattern once I looked retrospectively. Classic affair behavior, my lawyer noted dispassionately. Setting up her escape route. Each revelation should have hurt, but instead fortified my resolve. The woman who emptied our accounts wasn't the Amanda I married. She was someone who had been slowly emerging for years, like a photograph developing in reverse. I remembered the night 3 years ago when she'd returned from a client dinner, with flushed cheeks and a sparkle I hadn't seen directed at me in years. I recalled the weekend conference in Chicago that somehow generated no business cards or follow-up meetings. The unexplained hotel charge in our own city that she attributed to entertaining prospects. The clues had been there. The financial analyst had missed the human data points. While attorneys exchanged increasingly terse emails, I moved silently on multiple fronts. I leased a small office space downtown, nothing extravagant, but with the understated elegance that inspires client confidence. I registered Harmon Financial Strategies, LLC. I cultivated relationships with former clients who had always preferred my personal touch to the corporate bureaucracy of Morgan and Blackwell. When Amanda's lawyer requested a complete accounting of my current assets during mediation, I provided exactly what was legally required: bank statements from the day after she left, investment holdings established post-separation, and details of my newly formed company with its minimal early revenue. "Mr. Harmon," her attorney pressed, "your financial disclosures seem unusually thin for someone of your professional standing." I maintained steady eye contact. "Your client liquidated our joint holdings before departing. What remains is what I've built since then." Across the conference table, Amanda shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. The roots of her highlighted hair had grown out, revealing the natural brown I'd always preferred. "And you expect us to believe you had no personal reserves? A financial analyst with no personal investments?" "I didn't say that," I replied calmly. "I disclosed every account established or funded since the date of separation, as required by law." Mitch subtly tapped his pen on the table, our agreed signal that we were on solid legal ground. The account had been established years before, with funds clearly traceable to my personal bonuses. More importantly, I hadn't touched it since Amanda left, creating a clear separation date firewall. Her lawyer's frustration was evident. Without proof of hidden assets, their leverage evaporated. The woman who expected to claim half of everything was confronting the reality that she had already taken more than her share. I didn't feel triumph during the final signing. Just a quiet vindication and an unexpected lightness, as if severing this final connection had freed me from more than just a failed marriage. The day after finalizing my divorce, I withdrew $250,000 from my secret account, now legally untouchable, and made my first major investment in Harmon Financial Strategies. Quality furnishings, cutting-edge financial software, and a modest marketing budget. Nothing flashy, everything functional. Starting over at 45 isn't part of the traditional life plan. Most men my age are settled into career trajectories, planning for college tuitions, or dreaming about early retirement. I was designing business cards and cold calling potential clients. My pitch was simple. I protect wealth from uncertainty, market volatility, economic downturns, and unforeseen personal circumstances. That last part usually earned knowing nods. Everyone has something they fear losing. The early months tested my resolve. I'd wake at 4 a.m. with spreadsheets swimming behind my eyelids, questioning my decision to leave the security of Morgan and Blackwell. My apartment remained Spartan, a bed, desk, and exercise equipment. I funneled every available dollar into the business, living on a fraction of my former income. 3 months in, I landed my first significant client. Martin Greaves, a semi-retired surgeon with a portfolio that had been mismanaged by a nephew with more confidence than competence. My buddy Jim says you saved his retirement after his advisor put everything in tech stocks, Martin said during our initial consultation. Says you're conservative, methodical, maybe even boring, but you make steady returns while others chase trends. I take that as a compliment, I replied. Good. Because after what my nephew did to my accounts, boring sounds fantastic. Martin's portfolio became my obsession. I restructured his investments with the attention I once reserved for 8-figure corporate accounts. When the quarterly results showed an 8.2% increase despite market turbulence, his referrals filled my calendar for the next 2 months. Meanwhile, social media provided occasional glimpses into Amanda's new life. Weekend trips to Napa Valley, a Mediterranean cruise. The diamond bracelet Richard surprised me with just because. Each post confirmed what I already knew. She was burning through capital faster than it could possibly be replenished. I didn't follow her accounts directly. A colleague mentioned seeing her posts during a lunch meeting. I didn't correct his assumption that the news would hurt me. Better to be viewed as stoic than calculating. 6 months into my venture, I hired my first employee, Sarah Chun, a brilliant recent finance graduate who challenged my thinking in ways that improved our client offerings. By month 8, we added Thomas, a marketing strategist who transformed our client acquisition approach. The watershed moment came when Westfield Technologies, a mid-sized firm considering an IPO, sought our guidance on executive wealth management. The CEO had been college friends with Martin, who recommended us with a ringing endorsement. Harmon won't tell you what you want to hear. He'll tell you what you need to know. After our presentation, the CEO pulled me aside. Your former firm pitched us last month. Twice the fees, half the personalized strategy. What made you strike out on your own? I considered my answer carefully. I realized the most valuable investment strategies aren't one-size-fits-all. They're built on understanding individual circumstances, anticipating specific risks, and preparing for both expected and unexpected turns. He studied me for a moment. Sounds like you learned that lesson personally. The most effective lessons usually come that way. The Westfield contract doubled our revenue projections overnight. We outgrew our initial office space and moved to the 16th floor of a downtown building with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. From my new desk, I could see the Morgan and Blackwell building where I'd spent 12 years. It looked smaller than I remembered. On our first anniversary, I took my team of 5 out to celebrate. Sarah raised her glass. To the best decision your ex-wife ever made. Everyone froze, uncertain how I'd react. I smiled genuinely. I couldn't have put it better myself. 18 months after launching Harmon Financial Strategies, I stood before our team of 15 in our expanded offices, unveiling what would become our signature approach. The digital display behind me showed a 3-dimensional model I'd developed over countless late nights. The Resilience Portfolio, I explained, rotating the projection to reveal multiple interconnected asset classes. Traditional diversification follows market sectors. Our approach maps investments against personal risk factors unique to each client, career volatility, family health history, geographic vulnerabilities. We're not just protecting wealth against market downturns, we're insulating it against life's unpredictability. The concept resonated. Within 6 months, our client list included 3 Fortune 500 executives, a celebrated neurosurgeon, and a retired tech entrepreneur whose portfolio we'd rescued from a significant downturn. Our minimum investment threshold had quadrupled. Success created its own momentum. Financial journals requested interviews about our unconventional approach. A prestigious industry publication named me among 40 financial innovators reshaping retirement planning. My calendar filled with speaking engagements at conferences I once attended as an anonymous participant. You've created something remarkable here, observed Elaine Morrison, our newest senior advisor poached from a competing firm. Most boutique financial shops are just smaller versions of the giants. You've actually innovated. Necessity, I replied, has a way of clarifying one's thinking. The irony wasn't lost on me that my professional renaissance emerged from personal devastation. I'd built a thriving business using the very qualities Amanda had found unbearably dull: caution, analysis, systematic thinking. Our client retention rate stood at 96%, unheard of in an industry where wealth jumped between advisors chasing marginally better returns. My personal life underwent an equally significant transformation. The Spartan apartment gave way to a lakeside condo with floor-to-ceiling windows and a dedicated home office. Morning runs along the shoreline replaced the solitary treadmill sessions that had sustained me during those early months. I rediscovered cooking, photography, and classical guitar, interests that had gradually disappeared during my marriage. Then there was Catherine, the art gallery owner I met at a charity auction. Our relationship developed with a comfortable patience neither of us felt compelled to rush. She appreciated my methodical nature without finding it restrictive, understanding that careful consideration wasn't the same as reluctance. "You observe before deciding," she noted during an early dinner. "Most people do the opposite." We'd been seeing each other for 4 months when I received the call from James Whitaker, Amanda's former colleague. "Thought you should know," he said, awkwardness evident in his voice. "There's been some drama at Meridian Marketing. Richard's been moved to the Seattle office following an ethics review. Amanda wasn't offered a transfer option." "I see," I replied, unsure why he thought this information would interest me. A pause. "Also, from what I gather, their relationship has deteriorated significantly. Financial stress, apparently. The lifestyle they were maintaining wasn't sustainable on their income alone." I thanked him for the information without commenting further. That evening, Catherine found me on the balcony, contemplating the sunset with a complexity of emotions I hadn't anticipated. "Bad news?" she asked, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Old news that shouldn't matter anymore," I replied truthfully. She studied me with the perceptiveness that had drawn me to her. "It can matter without changing anything, Daniel. Feelings don't invalidate progress." That insight, so simple yet profound, crystallized something I'd been learning throughout this entire journey. Acknowledging pain doesn't concede defeat. Understanding patterns doesn't trap you within them. The analytical mind and the emotional heart aren't adversaries but counterbalances. The next morning, I gathered our leadership team to expand on the resilience portfolio concept. "We're adding another dimension," I announced, revealing the updated model. "Opportunity mapping alongside risk mitigation. Because true financial resilience isn't just about surviving downturns, it's about emerging stronger from them." The same, I realized, could be said about life itself. The email arrived on an ordinary Tuesday morning, sandwiched between client updates and industry newsletters. The sender's name knocked the air from my lungs momentarily, Amanda Harmon. She'd kept my surname despite everything. "Daniel, I hope this message finds you well. I've been thinking about you lately, and wondering if we might meet for coffee sometime. There's much I'd like to discuss." 2 years of silence broken by 5 bland sentences. No acknowledgement of her actions, no hint of remorse. Just an invitation hovering in digital space, waiting for my response. I closed the message without replying and focused on preparing for my afternoon client meeting. That evening, Catherine and I attended the symphony, enjoying Brahms' Fourth with fingers intertwined. I said nothing about the email. By midnight, I'd almost convinced myself it didn't matter. 3 days later, my office phone rang with an external number I didn't recognize. "Daniel Harmon," I answered, distracted by the quarterly projections on my screen. "Daniel." Her voice hadn't changed, that same melodic quality that once made my name sound like the beginning of a favorite song. "I emailed you a few days ago." "I saw it," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "I've been quite busy." "Yes, I've heard." A hesitation permeated the line. "You've done incredibly well for yourself. Harmon Financial is making quite the name in circles I wouldn't have expected." The subtle condescension in her phrasing reminded me of 1,000 small dismissals throughout our marriage. The unspoken assumption that my success had somehow exceeded appropriate boundaries, as if she'd mentally assigned a modest ceiling to my potential. "What can I do for you, Amanda?" Another pause. "I thought perhaps we could meet. Things with Richard have ended. I've been doing some reflection on choices I've made." There it was, the real purpose behind the sudden reappearance. The rebound relationship had collapsed, just as the financial patterns had suggested it would. Their lifestyle had consumed whatever resources she'd taken from our accounts, and now she was recalculating options. "I don't think that would be productive," I replied. "Daniel, people make mistakes. 15 years together deserves at least a conversation." I swiveled my chair toward the window, taking in the skyline view from our corner office, a perspective earned through months of disciplined work and strategic decisions. In the reflection of the glass, I saw not just the city but the man I'd become. Focused, resilient, no longer defined by what had been taken from me, but by what I'd built since. "I agree that people make mistakes," I said finally. Mine was failing to recognize patterns that were clearly established. "I've corrected that professional oversight." "This is exactly the problem." Her voice sharpened with familiar frustration. "You reduce everything to data points and analysis. Our marriage wasn't a failed investment strategy." "No," I conceded. "Investments typically come with transparent disclosure of risks." The silence stretched between us, bridging years and wounds and fundamentally different understandings of accountability. "I've been struggling," she admitted finally, her voice smaller. "Richard's promotion to Seattle didn't include me. The housing market crashed right after I bought the condo, and I'm underwater on the mortgage. I thought maybe we could discuss." "Financial consulting?" I finished when she trailed off. "Harmon Financial has a minimum portfolio requirement that would be difficult to meet given your circumstances." "That's not what I meant," she snapped, then immediately softened. "I miss us, Daniel. The stability, the partnership. We had something real before things got complicated. In that moment, I felt an unexpected wave of something like gratitude. Not for her return, but for the clarity her absence had forced upon me. The man who might have welcomed her back no longer existed, not because of bitterness, but because of growth. Amanda, I said gently, what we had ended when you made a series of deliberate choices. I've made choices too, about the life I want to build and the people I want in it. I wish you well, but that chapter is finished. Just like that? 15 years dismissed in a business call. Her voice cracked slightly. No, I corrected. 15 years honored by refusing to pretend they ended differently than they did. Take care of yourself, Amanda. I ended the call and sat motionless, expecting pain or anger or vindication. Instead, I felt only a calm certainty that I had finally closed an account that had been lingering in reconciliation for too long. When Sarah knocked on my door minutes later with updated client presentations, I was already focused on the afternoon strategy session. The momentary disruption filed away like any other resolved matter. That evening, I told Catherine about the call, watching her expressive eyes as she processed the information. Are you okay? She asked, searching my face for hidden distress. I considered the question seriously. Yes, I said, realizing the truth of it. I really am. 3 years to the day after finding that cream-colored envelope, I stood before our team of 32 at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for Harman Financial's new headquarters. The sleek building, with its innovative design and energy-efficient features, represented everything we'd accomplished and everything we aspired to become. When people ask about our remarkable growth, I said during my brief remarks, they're looking for a secret formula or revolutionary strategy. The truth is both simpler and more complex. We built this firm on the principle that preparation creates opportunity. That disruption, whether in markets, industries, or personal lives, contains the seeds of transformation for those prepared to plant them. The audience applauded, unaware of the personal journey beneath the professional philosophy. Only Catherine, standing in the front row with quiet pride, fully understood the distance I'd traveled. Later that evening, as we celebrated privately on the rooftop garden of our new home, she presented me with a vintage investment manual from 1932. The year after the market crashed and a generation of financial thinkers began reimagining wealth preservation. For the man who turns setbacks into strategies, read her inscription. Do you ever regret it? She asked as we watched the sunset paint the horizon in amber and gold. Not the divorce, but keeping that separate account? Sometimes I wonder if it created a barrier in your marriage, a lack of complete trust. The question deserved careful consideration. The account wasn't the cause but a symptom, I finally replied. In a healthy partnership, it might have seemed unnecessary. In ours, it became essential. I've learned that true trust isn't blind faith but clear-eyed acceptance of possibilities, of imperfections, of the full landscape of human behavior. She nodded, understanding as she always did the layers beneath my measured words. My phone chimed with an email notification, the finalized acquisition agreement for a respected competitor whose founder was retiring. This merger would expand our client base into 3 new states and add specialized expertise in sustainable investing, positioning Harman Financial among the top independent advisory firms nationally. 5 years ago, I couldn't have imagined this trajectory. I had defined success conventionally: steady career advancement, comfortable marriage, eventual retirement with sufficient resources. Amanda's departure had shattered that narrow framework, forcing me to rebuild not just my finances, but my fundamental understanding of fulfillment. The secret account that began as a contingency plan had become seed capital for a life exponentially more rewarding than the one it was designed to preserve. The analytical skills that had seemed merely professional assets revealed themselves as personal strengths, not cold calculation, as Amanda had characterized them, but clear-sighted assessment of reality and possibility. You know what's ironic? I mused, accepting the glass of wine Catherine offered. If she hadn't emptied our accounts that day, if she'd left even half of our savings, I might never have launched the firm. I might have settled for a lateral move to another company, continuing essentially the same career path. The complete break forced complete reinvention, Catherine observed. Exactly. Her attempt to devastate me financially created the conditions for unprecedented growth. I smiled at the mathematical elegance of this outcome, not because I sought revenge, but because catastrophic events reveal structural weaknesses and hidden strengths simultaneously. As twilight deepened around us, I reflected on how thoroughly my perspective had transformed. The pain of betrayal had long since faded, replaced by genuine appreciation for the journey it initiated. The man sitting here now, leading a thriving company, engaged to a remarkable woman, mentoring young financial advisors, was unquestionably happier than the man who had opened that envelope 3 years ago. Amanda had taken what she thought was everything, never realizing she had actually cleared the path to something better. The secret account had provided not just financial security, but the foundation for a life built on authenticity rather than accommodation. Some might call it karma or poetic justice. As a financial analyst, I recognize it simply as the natural compounding of decisions over time, each choice creating the conditions for subsequent opportunities, constraints, and revelations. The most valuable asset, I've learned, isn't money but resilience, the capacity to transform setbacks into stepping stones, to recognize when losing everything means gaining the freedom to build anything. That's the ultimate return on investment.